So I was at Jordan's school today and he said something really funny and I proceeded to laugh out really loudly, like I normally do. And then I noticed a bunch of people staring at me in shock. All right, so there's a bunch of stuff we've all done at some point or the other, and a bunch of stuff we're all probably guilty of, and stuff that we don't realize might be considered really rude. So in today's video, we're talking about stuff we do as Indians and as other people as well that is considered really rude out here. Hello. If you're new to my channel, my name is Ashika. This is Absolutely Ashika. On this channel, we talk about everything from moving to the UK to what your life's going to look like once you get here. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so. You can also follow me on Instagram at Absolutely Ashika. The first thing, and this is my absolute pet peeve even back home, is cutting the queue. Don't cut the queue. I beg you, don't cut the queue. There are queues here for everything. There is a queue to get food, there's a queue for groceries, there's a queue to get into the train, there's a queue for everything. And the absolute worst thing that can happen is if somebody cuts the queue, because things can then get actually really heated, apart from all the dirty, disgusting stares you're going to get from a lot of people. So just for everyone's sake, please don't cut the queue. It's not a very big deal to cut the queue in India, especially because most of the time we don't queue up for anything. And even at times when you expect people to not cut queues, like in places where you work, you still find a lot of people cutting the queue just because they think what they have to do was probably more urgent than what everybody else has to do. Yeah, that doesn't work here. All right. The second thing is being overtly friendly and talking to people you don't know. In the UK, you don't make small talk with people you don't know. In fact, you don't talk to them at all unless you really have to. When I was younger back home in India, my dad would be able to strike up a conversation with anyone sitting in the bus or a train, or even when he went shopping. I mean, he could just talk to anyone and they happily reciprocated, and everyone was just happy to talk to everybody else. But no one wants to talk to people they don't know over here. So if you are the kind of person who goes up to somebody who's sitting beside them in the train and tries to strike up a conversation, you're probably going to be met with awkward silence or a very uncomfortable conversation, or they'll probably just leave because they don't want to talk to you. So avoid all of those painful encounters, and try not to strike up conversations with people you do not know. Here, people don't like talking to people they don't know, to the extent where our tour guide in Oxford didn't really want to talk to us or tell any of us anything. He was like, look around for yourself, soak it in. Now, slightly contrary to the previous point, is not greeting people. In India, you don't really greet people unless you're going to start a conversation with them. But here, you could just greet somebody who's walking across the street from you and then keep walking. You don't really have to talk to them. And it goes for talking or greeting to all people that you meet who are probably providing a service as well. Like when you sit in a cab, you greet your cab driver. When you go shopping, you greet the cashier, or you greet anybody who comes or interacts with you as a part of their job. It's very normal to do it. I know for a fact that I wouldn't speak to most of the cab drivers in India, but here it's very normal. When you sit in the cab, you say, hey, how you doing? Have you been having a good day? And that's the limit to your conversation. Don't use this as an excuse to start up a little small conversation of your own with him. But please do remember to greet people, especially when they're offering you a service over here. Before I go ahead, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so. It's right here. Littering. It's not common to litter in India, but it's also not heavily frowned upon. And most often than not, you can get away with it without having to pay a fine. But don't litter here. It's a beautiful place. It's clean, it's tidy, and the small little actions that each of us do is responsible for keeping it this way. And if each of us starts to litter even a little bit, it's not going to look like how it looks like right now, right? So all of us have a part to play. We have this one particular instance when we moved into our house and we had a lot of packaging boxes from IKEA, and they weren't really all fitting into the garbage bins that we had outside. So we lined some of them up beside the bin. And to our sheer bad luck, it rained that night and the boxes blew all over the street and scattered around. And because our luck was even worse, it started to rain and the boxes got wet and flattened out on the road, and some cars went over them. And we woke up in the morning to this horror and realized that the street was no longer clean thanks to us. And so we proceeded to go to the street and pick up and gather each of these wet, dripping boxes back. And we somehow managed to stuff them into our garbage bins. And the ones that had gotten run over by cars were now part of the road. But we picked those up as well. It wasn't a very pleasant process, but we still did it, primarily because we wanted to keep our surroundings clean. So it's not really that difficult. All right, so another thing all of us are guilty of is trying to force or push things to get done faster because that's how we want it. Now, in India, most often when someone gives you a timeline and it doesn't meet your requirements, what you do is you keep pushing until they agree to do it faster. You keep following up, you keep reminding them, you keep telling them that it's important, and you push and push and push. Yeah, don't do that here. If someone has given you a timeline, that's the timeline they're probably going to stick to, right? They're not going to do it earlier, they're not going to do it later either. They're not going to appreciate you encouraging them to work faster or pushing them to get things done faster just because it suits your interests. They're probably going to frown upon it quite a bit and probably going to tell you extremely curtly that those are the timelines that work for them and they aren't willing to change them. Another thing that is super rude over here, but not so much back home, is turning up at someone's house uninvited. You simply don't do it over here. If you're going to go over to someone's house, you're going to have to call up in advance, let them know you're coming, let them know when, probably turn up with something for the host as well, and not just show up completely uninvited out of the blue. Now, something that we learned was rude the hard way over here was not thanking or acknowledging a driver that has stopped to let you cross the road. The first time this particular incident happened was when we were crossing the road with Jordan, and I thanked the driver, and Arijit thanked him as well, but he didn't see Arijit, and he got really upset and was like, "Hey!" And we were like, all right, obviously it's a big pain point over here. But since then, we have religiously made it a point to thank every driver every time they stop their car, even if it's a zebra crossing. But every single driver who stops their car to allow us to pass, make it a point to thank them every single time. Now, something most of us are guilty of again, turning up late or not turning up at all and not letting the other person know. We have, as we like to call it, the Indian Standard Time, which is later than all other time zones. It's the time zone of our own, mostly because we're always late. And in India, it's just a way of life. I mean, no one really gets anywhere in time. You go for a wedding, if they call you for the reception at 7, you know for a fact it isn't going to start before 8:30, so you don't get there before 9. But here, if someone has invited you at 7, you show up at 7. Not at 7:15, not at 7:30, but at 7. And finally, the last point is something I'm guilty of as well. It's being loud. In my case, I tend to laugh really loudly. It's just an old habit of mine. When I find something really funny, I laugh from my heart or my stomach, wherever that loud noise is coming from. I really don't know, but I tend to laugh with all of me. And I don't think that's the way of life over here. I think even if you want to laugh, you have to laugh with your teeth or your mouth and stifle in that inner joy you're experiencing and just be polite about how you laugh. Okay, I'm just kidding, but you don't laugh like a crazy person like how I do, because that will just get you a lot of unwarranted stares. But the people as a whole are a lot more quiet and reserved and not really loud as a society as a whole. I don't think I've ever heard loud music, for instance, playing from any of the houses in our street or any of the cars that go by. And even when it comes to having conversations with your partner or your family or having a conversation on the phone, you usually limit the volume at which you're talking, because to be very honest, no one wants to know how your day went and no one wants to know who you're talking to or what your business is about. No one really cares. So the best thing you can do is talk softly, and very honestly, if you want to fit in, respect the way people work here, then respect the way people live here, right? It does get trickier trying to explain this to children because Jordan's a really loud child and he tends to sing really loudly on the road, or when we take him shopping, he's always the loudest child in the aisle. But the good thing is, kids do tend to get away with most things, so I'm not too worried about that. And if he's ever too loud, I just pretend he's not mine if anyone asks, so there's always that. This was the things we do a lot back home and things you shouldn't do in the UK if you don't want to be considered rude. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so. You can also follow me on Instagram at absolutely Ashika. I put out videos every week about life in the UK and moving to the UK, so do remember to hit the bell icon for notifications for whenever I put out a new video. Thanks for watching.